Evolution Stones, introduced in the very first Pokemon games, had started with just a few basic elements, but over the years, Game Freak just couldn't help themselves, and added even more, like the Sun, Dawn, Dusk, and Shiny Stone, evolving fan favorites like Gallade, Roserade, and Frostlass. By now, they've become one of the most consistent mechanics in the series, giving you instant power, often at the cost of your Pokemon's growth. But no region ever leaned into them as hard as Kanto. FireRed and Leaf Green alone featured over 16 different stone-based evolutions, the largest pool of any generation. In other words, Kanto isn't just where Pokemon began, it's where evolution stones became a defining feature, which raises the question, what if you were to go back to Kanto and try to beat the entire game using only evolution stone Pokemon? And in today's video, I answer that question by taking on Pokemon FireRed and doing just that. Now the rules for this challenge are simple. Rule number 1, I can only catch and battle with Pokemon who need an Evo Stone to evolve. Rule number 2, I must see through to evolving every Pokemon I catch before the Elite Four. And rule number 3, try my absolute best not to overlevel. Let's get started. Starting off our journey, I'm tasked with the hardest decision of them all, choosing my starter, and my gut was just telling me Bulbasaur was the one to sit in my PC of course, because my real starter for this challenge needs to evolve by an evolution stone, and the first Pokemon you encounter that meets this criteria is in Viridian Forest. So after running some errands for Professor Oak, I walk my way into the forest and find the one, Pikachu. Now, Pikachu isn't the greatest electric type, but is obviously the face of Pokemon, and can evolve into Raichu with a Thunderstone, so it fit the script. I caught her, named her C by accident, and then ventured on to the next town. So, Pikachu is the first Pokemon you can catch before the first gym, but unfortunately he's also the only one you can catch. And as we know, Brock is the first gym leader, with all rock and ground type Pokemon. Meaning, Pikachu's attacks do almost absolutely nothing. So I started training, doing everything I could to level up. I beat Gary on Route 22, slaughtered countless Pokemon in the forest, and finally got her to level 12. Abiding by the no overleveling rule, this was the perfect time to challenge the gym, and I will say, I stood absolutely no chance. I couldn't even make it past the gym trainer, which was saying something. And this time it wasn't just a skill issue, I promise. It was literally just impossible. Pikachu just couldn't output enough damage to kill a rock type Pokemon. It's just that simple. So I was stuck between cheating the challenge by using Bulbasaur or cheating the challenge by overleveling, and I ruled that overleveling was the lesser offense, so that's what I did. Coming back to the gym at a mighty level 19, I faced off against Brock and used a carefully crafted strategy that would give me a chance to win this fight. I first battled his Geodude, and of course I needed to set up with Double Team in order to ensure I wouldn't be hit. Then the static ability did what it needed to do, paralyzing him, and finally I spammed Quick Attack. And as you'll notice, Quick Attack literally only takes away 1 HP per hit, so I realistically wouldn't be able to beat his second Pokemon without running out of PP. Which is why I'm conveniently at level 19 with a full XP bar, so when I beat the Geodude, I level up to level 20. And learn Slam. From there, I have another attacking move to use against Onix, his next Pokemon. I take some time to heal a bit since his Rock Tomb does quite a bit of damage, but after that, it's right back to spamming Slam, eventually knocking out the Onix, securing me my first hard-fought win against Brock. He gives me my first gym badge, and I can finally move on to the next area. I then made it to Route 3, where I could really kick things off. I walked through some of that glorious tall grass and found my second Pokemon of the run, Nidoran. Nidoran is a fairly good poison type, known for its even greater evolution, Nidoking, which in my favor evolves with the use of a Moonstone, making it legal to catch per challenge rules. Now this is hands down one of my favorite Pokemon from Kanto, and I'm sure many agree. Having him on my team is definitely an upgrade from just the Pikachu, so I caught him, named him Rex, and strolled my way into Mount Moon. During my Mount Moon expedition, it didn't take long for that Nidoran to evolve into Nidorino. Granted, I did some leveling both outside and inside the cave, and on my way to the lower levels, I have fortunately ran into another future member of my team, Clefairy. Now, Clefairy is a normal type, which is something I'm not used to using if I'm being honest. I don't think I've ever in my life used one of these pixie, pink and round Pokemon in a playthrough, so this was new territory for me. But it evolved with a Moonstone, so it made the cut for the team. I caught her, named her Peach, and continued through the cave. I then beat up some Team Plasma members, made some prehistoric finds, and walked my way out the cave into Celadon City. Now before taking on the gym, I still had more team building to do, so I marched my way through the long line of trainers, gained lots of XP, and searched deep into the tall grass for yet another Pokemon to add to my team, Oddish. Now personally, I'm a Bellsprout fan, but Oddish was the version exclusive, so it had to make the cut. I caught her and named her Oddball. After the well-needed team building, it was time to challenge the second gym. While fighting the trainers, I mainly used Oddish to level her up as much as possible because I had planned to sweep Misty's whole team. I made it to the gym leader and took her on, sending out Oddball as she used Staryu. My first tactic was to stun Spore while she confused me with a Water Pulse that did little damage. But on the next turn, I'd end up hitting myself due to the confusion as she raised her defense. But none of that would matter as Oddish snapped itself out of the confusion and got straight to spamming Absorb, which took her down in a few turns, leaving us at full health. Misty's next and final Pokemon was Starmie, and I stuck to the same tactic. I used Stun Spore to paralyze and then spammed Absorb to deal damage while recovering from her swift attacks. And after a few turns attacking back and forth, I got the win, earning my second gym badge, the Cascade badge. As I journeyed towards Route 6, my Oddish surprisingly started evolving into Gloom. This was right after I had spanked some Team Rocket member for causing trouble. I then made it to Route 6, did some more battling, then arrived at Vermilion City. From here, I had to take aboard the SSN in search of the captain of the ship. And during this search, I had bumped into the menace himself, Gary. He unexpectedly challenged me to a battle, and we kicked things off going Pidgeotto vs Rex. Now, I was low on health in Pokemon, but I still had to make it work, taking his Pidgeotto down in 2 turns with a Horn attack. His second Pokemon was Kadabra, and I matched him up with Pikachu, and all it takes is a Thunder Shock followed by a Slam attack to take him down as well. Gary's third Pokemon was Raticate, who proved to be a lot stronger. I miss my first Slam and get hit with a Hyper Fang that luckily paralyzes him with my static ability, but I faint on the next turn to another Hyper Fang. My next choice was to send Gloom into battle, spamming Absorb till he's taken down and I recover most of my health. Gary's final Pokemon is Charmeleon, and I keep Gloom into battle to paralyze him with Stun Spore, but clearly it wouldn't save him from Charmeleon's Ember attack. Gloom hangs on for a few more turns using Absorb and getting lucky, but the luck runs out and she's scorched. The only Pokemon I had left was Rex, and it was a pretty fair match since both of them were at similar health and paralyzed. I stuck to using Horn Attack, which takes him below half on the first turn, and after both Pokemon were stunned on the second turn, I finish him off with a follow-up hit, marking my victory. I then found the captain hunched over a garbage can, and I know a week-long bender when I see it. He gives me the HM cut, which is super useful, allowing me to access the third gym. But before I challenged the gym, I was in need of an upgrade, so I used the Moonstone I had gotten from the cave to evolve Nidorino into Nidoking, which was perfect because he's now a ground type, becoming immune to all electric type attacks. I then challenged the third gym, taking on all of the trainers with ease. The real hard part was the annoying switch puzzle that took me extra long as usual to figure out. The next challenge was the gym leader, Lieutenant Surge. We started the battle going Voltorb vs Gloom. I hit him with a Stun Spore to paralyze and then spam Absorb until he's brought to red health, rehealing from all of his attacks. Then Surge decides to use his Super Potion, but I stick to the same tactic, getting a critical hit, then taking him down nearly unscathed. His second Pokemon was Pikachu, who used Double Team, which made landing a hit really difficult, and he ends up paralyzing me, which makes this part of the battle nearly impossible. For over 10 turns, I'm either missing my attack or stunned, as he slowly knocks down my health with Quick Attack, taking down my Gloom. So I send in Rex to handle him and use Poison Sting, which luckily lands and also poisons Pikachu. Of course, I have troubles landing any attack after that, but his health is slowly chipped away by the poison. And then finally, I'm able to land a Horn attack which takes him down, but leaves me paralyzed. His final Pokemon was Raichu, so I send out Clefairy as a sacrifice to heal my other Pokemon. I use a Paralyzed Heal on Nidoking, and shortly after, put Raichu to sleep with Sing. I then switched Nidoking into battle and used Dig. I missed the first one, but while Raichu's still sleeping, I managed to land the second one, taking him down, and giving me the win. Lieutenant Surge hands over the Thunder Badge, and I continue on my journey. After my victory at the gym, I traveled to Route 9 from Cerulean City, did a little bit of battling, and made it to the Rock Tunnel. Now mind you, I couldn't obtain the move Flash yet, because I needed 10 Pokemon to be registered in my Pokédex in order to receive it, so I went in completely blind. Luckily, the power of YouTube tutorials saved me, and I made it out with my sanity intact. Coming out of the Rock Tunnel led me to Lavender Town, but at this point there was nothing I could do here, yet. So I headed west to Route 8, which was perfect since my 5th member of the team just so happened to live there. I searched through some grass, and I found him, Growlithe. Now I've used Growlithe on this channel before, back in my Black 2 video, and he was pretty useless until evolving into Arcanine. I guess this was his chance to redeem himself, which we'll find out soon. I caught him, named him Dogosaurus as a tribute to the original Dogzilla, then ventured on. My next stop was Celadon City, which kept me quite busy with lots to do. But first things first, I visited the Celadon Mansion, of course to receive my final Pokemon of the run, Eevee. We all know Eevee fits the run's criteria in 3 different ways, being able to evolve into either Jolteon, Vaporeon, or Flareon. You can probably guess which one I'll choose, but if you can't, I'll leave it as a surprise. I named him Switch, random name I know, then strolled my way to the Celadon department store. Here, I'd be able to purchase all of the evolution stones I need for my team. This was the absolute perfect place to be, and although I possessed all of the stones I needed to fully evolve my team, I decided it would be a lot more fun to evolve them one by one before every major battle, to keep the run challenging. And the first Pokemon I'd be evolving before taking on the Celadon gym was Pikachu. I gave her that good old Thunderstone and watched as she turned from a harmless hamster into a more electrifying guinea pig. After that, I walked into the 4th gym and prepared for battle. In these trainer battles, I primarily used Growlithe, trying to level him up the best I could, preparing him for the real challenge, Erica. We started our battle going Victory Bell versus Growlithe, and I'm immediately poisoned. Luckily, my Ember attack does just enough damage to bring him within red health in 2 turns, forcing Erica to heal with a Hyper Potion. Although, it's useless, as our 3rd Ember leaves her burn, and her acid attack barely does any damage. And by the 4th turn, she's taken down, still leaving me in critical condition. So I send in Peach to handle her Tangela, and I use Pound to do a little damage. Then use Sing to put her to sleep. Erica ends up full healing, so I stick to attacking with Pound, bringing her below half. She then hits me with a Giga Drain that does decent damage and uses Ingrain to heal back up, making this a lot harder. So I put her asleep once again and use it as an opportunity to heal Growlithe. I then switch him back in and get to spamming Ember, which takes her down in 2 turns, but not before getting poisoned once again. Her final Pokemon was Vileplume, and it became apparent Ember wasn't gonna cut it, only taking her to half health before dying to an acid attack. So I send out Raichu and use Thunder Wave to paralyze her, then follow up spamming Slam, nearly taking her out, but she hangs in with Giga Drain, healing back her health and defeating my Raichu. But Vileplume's left vulnerable, and I send in Rex to finish the job with a final Horn attack, giving me the win, and claiming my 4th gym badge, the Rainbow Badge. After defeating the gym, I found myself at the game corner, battling a Team Rocket member, who revealed a hidden passage into the basement. It turned out to be Team Rocket's secret hideout, and I was challenged to take them down. I made it to their leader Giovanni, and we faced off going Onyx versus Growlithe. Recognizing it was a bad matchup, I switched Gloom into battle, and took him down with a single Absorb. His second Pokemon was Rhydon, but he wasn't any better, also getting one-shot by an Absorb. Then his third and final Pokemon was Kangaskhan, so I sent in Raichu to chop him down with Brick Break, and after 3 turns, he was successfully taken down as well, defeating Giovanni. After raiding their base without a warrant, I continued on my journey. And since the progression in this game isn't exactly linear, I was confused on what to take on next. But I ultimately decided to tackle the Pokemon Tower at Lavender Town. But before I entered the tower, I evolved Clefairy into Clefable with another Moonstone. Again, don't know what to expect out of this Pokemon, but we'll see how it goes. I then made my way up the Haunted Tower and came across the culprit of all these ghostly activities, Marowak. I freed her spirit and off she went into the afterlife. What the f kind of game is this? Anyways, I fought off Team Rocket at the top of the tower who were holding Mr. Fuji hostage, and as an award for saving him, he gifted me the Pokeflute. This would allow me to finally get that fat ass Snorlax out the way. After murdering the Snorlax, I headed south down to Route 12, and it was unbelievable how many trainers this game actually makes you battle. It's unreal, but it's also great levels, so I fight them all anyways. After slaughtering my way to Fuchsia City, I prepare to take on the gym, and finally decide it's time to evolve Eevee. Now if it wasn't already obvious, I planned on turning Eevee into Vaporeon with a Water Stone, which is probably the strongest out of the 3 evolutions. So I did just that and headed my way into the 5th gym. I made my way around the elaborate maze, which I've almost fully memorized from all the times I played this game, and reached the gym leader, Koga. We started our battle going Coughing versus Gloom. Immediately I used Stun Spore to paralyze, but the bastard just kamikazes himself and explodes, taking both of us down. He then sends out Muck, so I go with Clefairy to use Sing, putting him to sleep. From there, I switch into Rex and use Dig, but the Muck wakes up in time to use Minimize, lowering my accuracy on the attack and forcing a miss. I use Dig once again, and luckily land a hit, but I realize that's not happening again, so I switch into Growlithe, thinking Aerial Ace would be my perfect move, but it barely does any damage, and the Muck takes us down within a few turns with Sludge. I then send in Vaporeon, and of course he Hyper Potions, so my quick attack meant nothing. So I switch plans, and send out Raichu to do some damage with Thunderbolt, which actually hits him, but it doesn't matter as he retaliates with a critical hit Sludge that takes me down alongside the poison. Damn. I was quickly running out of options, so I sent in Clefairy out of panic. I luckily get off a strength attack that brings him below half before being killed off by a flurry of sludge attacks. I was down to my last 2 Pokemon, so I sent Rex back in, hoping I could just land a single dig, and by the grace of God, it hit, finally taking down the muck that nearly swept my whole team. I keep Rex in to face off against Coughing, and of course, dig doesn't work. So I get the spamming Horn attack till he's brought to critical condition, then Koga uses another Hyper Potion, but it doesn't matter as he's taken down with Horn attack shortly after. His final Pokemon is Weezing, and I just stick to what's working. We go back and forth using Horn attack and Tackle, knocking us both down to critical condition. But luckily, Rex has the speed advantage and gets a critical hit that knocks down the Weezing, giving us the win, and granting us our 5th gym badge, the Soul Badge. After defeating the Fuchsia City gym, I traveled to Saffron City, which was being occupied by Team Rocket. So I made my way into the Silph Co building where they were operating out of, and I battled every Team Rocket member I could find for 11 floors straight. Near the top of the tower, for some reason I found Gary posted up, begging to battle. So of course I had to give his team a good ass whooping. We kick off our battle going Pidgeotto versus Growlithe, and I quickly switch into Raichu. One Thunderbolt takes him down, and he sends Gyarados in next, who'd meet the exact same fate, going down to a single Thunderbolt as well. His 3rd Pokemon was Execute, and I decided to keep Raichu in, taking him down with 2 Thunderbolts, sweeping half of his team. But his 4th Pokemon was Alakazam, so I switched up the tactic and sent in Vaporeon. I used Bite to deal super effective damage as he wasted away 3 turns using Calm Mind, and of course I knock him down, so he sends in his final Pokemon, Charizard. And since I already have the tight matchup with Vaporeon, I keep him in and use Surf that brings him to critical condition. But because of his smoke screen, I miss on the 2nd turn, leaving me vulnerable to a flamethrower that causes a burn, and I'm sadly taken down right after by Alakazam's Future Sight, coupled by Charizard's flamethrower. It's all good though, as Clefable's brought in to deal the finishing blow with strength. And after Gary, the next ass whooping I had to hand out was to Giovanni, the Team Rocket leader. Yes, for causing a citywide panic, but mainly for blocking my way to the next gym. It was a fairly easy match, as Growlithe took down his Nidorino with Flame Wheel, Nidoking beat his Rhyhorn with Dig, and then took down his Kangaskhan with Poison, and lastly knocked out his Nidoking with Dig as well, giving us an easy win and freeing the city. Now that Team Rocket was out the way, I could finally challenge the Saffron City gym, but once again it was time for another evolution. This time, it was Gloom's turn to touch that wondrous Leaf Stone, evolving her into Vileplume. This was a nice evolution to have in general, but not exactly beneficial for the Psychic type gym. Regardless, I entered the Saffron City gym, and of course took on every trainer possible, mostly using Growlithe to gain experience, and also because he was one of the Pokemon on my team that had a dark type move. I then took on the gym leader, Sabrina. In our first match, we went Growlithe vs Kadabra, and I absolutely one-shot her Kadabra with Bite. The next Pokemon she brings in is Mr. Mime, but sadly it doesn't go as smoothly. Our Bite attack brings it just above half health, and then she retaliates with a Side Beam, putting me in yellow. On the next turn, I get off a Bite to bring her into critical condition, but the Future Sight from the previous match takes Growlithe out, so I send in Clefable next as Sabrina uses the Hyper Potion. I decide to spam Strength while she Side Beams, and the back and forth brings us both to low health, though she uses her 2nd Hyper Potion to heal, taking another Strength, then finishing me off with the Side Beam. I send in Vaporeon next to do major damage with Bite, and she uses Baton Pass to flee and switches into Venomoth. I spam a flurry of attacks using Bite and Aurora Beam to take her down as she misses all of her Supersonics. She then sends in her Mr. Mime to use Side Beam, but is quickly taken down with a Bite. Her final Pokemon was Alakazam, so I switched Raichu into battle and used Thunderbolt. And surprising enough, this was the easiest matchup, taking him down in just 2 turns, and giving me my 6th gym badge, the Marsh Badge. After defeating the gym, I took a nice water route down to Seafoam Islands, where I was delighted with such complex and unique puzzles. Oh, how much I fucking love puzzles. And after solving the first one, I was awarded with meeting the great Articuno himself, who I ruthlessly murdered down as a reward for my troubles. After making my way out the cave, I surfed over to Cinnabar Island where I could take on the next gym. But of course it wouldn't be that easy. Something had to get in the way. The door was fucking locked. So I headed into this mysterious burnt down mansion, which was just another big puzzle. But thankfully, I found the key for the gym, which for some reason was sitting on the ground of an arsoned lab. So now I walk over and reopen the gym myself and get to battle him. Now it made sense to use Vaporeon for this fire gym, but at this point he was already pretty high level. It was Nidoking and Clefable who really needed the XP, so that's who I was using primarily to take down these gym trainers. I then fought the gym leader, Blaine. The first Pokemon he sends out is Growlithe, as I send out Clefable. I try to use Sing, but it misses, and I get hit with a crazy fire blast that leaves me near half health with a burn. On the second turn, I try to minimize and lower his accuracy, but his second Fire Blast lands, taking out Peach for good. The next Pokemon I sent in was Nidoking, and I used Dig, avoiding his attack and one-shotting him for the knockout. Blaine's second Pokemon was Ponyta, and I stuck to the same strategy of using Dig for that one-hit KO. His third Pokemon was Rapidash, so I switched into Vaporeon and took him down easily with a single Surf. And lastly, his final Pokemon, Arcanine, which would meet the exact same fate, getting one tapped by a Surf as well, giving me an easy win and earning me the Volcano badge. After defeating the 7th gym leader, I was kidnapped by some guy named Bill and brought to an island I could not escape. Not unless I killed the legendary bird Moltres and saved some little girl from being abducted by a Hypno? Wait, we're not just gonna gloss over that. Somebody call f***ing Gideon, we have a predator that needs subduing. This Hypno just kidnapped a little girl and brought her to the edge of the forest? What the f*** kind of game is this? So I had to put him down, for good. For Big J. After completing my work at the islands, I decided it was time to finally evolve Growlithe, the last unevolved member of my team, into Arcanine. After learning Flamethrower, it was finally time, and looking at my team, we've come so far. All of them. Fully evolved, and I used every evolution stone I could possibly obtain. And with how easy these gyms have been, I began to wonder if evolution stone Pokemon were actually superior than the rest. Anyways, I walk into the 8th gym and get to battling. Now at this point, I really need to level up my Nidoking, so I tried to include him in every battle I could. I then took on the final gym leader, and surprise surprise, it's Giovanni. The first Pokemon he sends out is Rhyhorn, and I respond with Clefable. Immediately, I try to use Sing, but I miss, back-to-back times. The third turn, I get hit with an Earthquake, bringing me to half health, but luckily Sing lands, putting Rhyhorn to sleep. I then use Brick Break, getting a lucky critical hit bringing him past half health, but he switches out to Nidoqueen, who nearly ends Peach's life. Just barely holding on, I managed to put her to sleep with Sing, then switch out to Vaporeon to deal damage with Surf, and just one Surf is enough to take her down with a critical hit. The third Pokemon he uses is Dugtrio, so I send out Vileplume and use Stun Spore to paralyze him. I then hit him with an Absorb for 2 turns, bringing him to critical condition, prompting Giovanni to use a Hyper Potion, but it didn't matter, as I would get him right back down to red health, healing all the damage he caused, which forced him to use his second Hyper Potion, and from there the tactic was the same, just 3 turns later, taking him down unscathed. His fourth Pokemon was a Nidoking, and I Stun Spore him as well, then switch into Rex. Unfortunately, Giovanni still has a full heal to use, curing the paralysis, and then I did something dumb. I tried to use Dig to deal damage, but he just used Earthquake, which hit me underground, taking me down in one hit. So I sent Vileplume back in to use Stun Spore, paralyze him, and do a bit of damage with Cut before getting knocked out. I then switched to Vaporeon, and one Surf is all it takes to take him down. His final Pokemon was Rhyhorn, but he'd meet the exact same fate, getting one shot by a Surf, giving me the win, and receiving my final gym badge, the Earth badge. After defeating my final gym challenge, I walked over to that good old Route 22, where it all started, and fought Gary once again. Keeping things brief, my Raichu one-shot his Pidgeot with Thunderbolt, then Vileplume takes down his Rhyhorn with Absorb. Following that, Arcanine destroys his Alakazam with Bite, and Raichu sent back in to kill his Gyarados with another Thunderbolt. And lastly, Arcanine kills off Execute with Flamethrower, and Raichu smites Charizard out the sky with Lightning. It was an easy win. After that quick battle, I made it to those glorious gates, and it was time for the Pokemon League. I traveled through Victory Road, battling trainers, fighting off wild Pokemon, solving boulder puzzles, and best of all, leveling up. And all that was left was to take on the Elite Four, and compete for the title of Pokemon Champion. So I walked my way into the Indigo Plateau and took on my first Elite Four member, Lorelei, the Ice-type user. We start off going Clefable versus Dugong, but I quickly switch into Raichu for the type advantage. I end up hitting her with Thunderbolt that does great damage, but she responds with an Ice Beam that brings me down just above half health. She uses the full restore to heal, but I stick with the tactic and take her down in 2 more turns with Thunderbolt. Her second Pokemon was Cloyster, who Raichu was able to one-shot with another Thunderbolt, and her third Pokemon was Slowbro, who wouldn't go down as easy, just barely surviving a Thunderbolt and knocking Raichu down with Surf. So I sent in Vileplume next and used Giga Drain for the KO. I then sent out Rex to match up with her Lapras and used Toxic to poison. I followed that up with an Earthquake that did decent damage, but her Ice Beam in return nearly took me out. So I switched into Arcanine to tank an oncoming Ice Beam and responded with a Flamethrower that would knock her out. Her final Pokemon was Jinx, so I kept in Arcanine to use Flamethrower, which put her in critical condition, but in response she puts me to sleep, so I use a full heal to wake up and a final bite to take her down for good, giving me the win. The second Elite Four member I faced was Bruno, the fighting type-ish user. We matched up Arcanine versus Onix and I immediately have to switch into Vaporeon. From there, I get hit with a Rock Tomb and an Earthquake, taking me just above half health, before I one-shot him with Surf. He sends in Hitmonchan next, and I switch Arcanine back into battle, using Aerial Ace just twice to get the knockout, while suffering some damage to a Rock Tomb and Uppercut. His third Pokemon was Machamp, and I stick with Arcanine and spam Aerial Ace until he's brought to yellow health. But unfortunately, I get taken down by a Cross Chop, which prompts me to send in Raichu. I nearly get the knockout with Thunderbolt, leaving him in critical condition, but his Cross Chop puts me there as well. Bruno full restores on the next turn, undoing my progress as I try for another Thunderbolt that deals weak damage. He then switches out to another Onix, so I hit him with a Brick Break before dying to a Double Edge. I then switch to Vaporeon, who tanks an Earthquake but one taps him with a Surf. Bruno puts Machamp back into battle, and I'm fortunate enough to get off 2 Surfs without being touched, taking his Machamp down. And for his last Pokemon, Hitmonlee, I send in Nidoking to poison him with Toxic, and use a max potion to restore whatever health he took away from me. I tried to slowly wait out his death, but unfortunately when he got to red health, he full restored, making me restart my tactics again. I poison him, hit him with an Earthquake, and finally take him out, giving me the hard-fought win. The third Elite Four member I took on was Agatha, the poison type user. She first sends in Gengar to match up against my Arcanine. I use Bite twice, taking her down to red health, but she hits me with a Toxic that poisons me, then heals up on the next turn, but I stuck with my strategy and used Bite some more, then used Aerial Ace twice when she lowered my accuracy, guaranteeing a hit, and taking Gengar down. Her second Pokemon was Golbat, so I send out Raichu to handle it. He nearly takes her down with a single Thunderbolt, but ends up getting confused and attacking herself over the next few turns while being poisoned, which unfortunately takes us out. So I send in Peach on cleanup duty and slap the Golbat one time with strength for a knockout. Her third Pokemon was Arbok, who hit me with a strong Sludge Bomb, but I retaliated with Sting to put her to sleep. I then switched into Nidoking and took her down with just 2 Earthquakes unscathed. Her fourth Pokemon was Haunter, and I tried to use Mega Horn, but it did little damage. So I switched into Vaporeon. Haunter used Curse, which brought himself down to low health, and then died to my Bite attack, but that Curse would come back to haunt me. She sent out Gengar next and put me to sleep with Hypnosis, as I suffered damage from the ghostly spirit of her Haunter. I decided to use Vaporeon as a sacrifice to heal up Arcanine, and after fainting, I switched him back into battle. The tactic here was to spam Bite until she was no longer, and I tried for a finishing move with Flamethrower, leaving her at 1 HP, but she full restores. So I decided to match her energy and do the same for Arcanine, who had suffered quite a bit of damage. After healing, I spammed some more attacks, using both Bite and Flamethrower to take her down, giving me the win. The final Elite Four member I faced was Lance, the Dragon type user. His first Pokemon is Gyarados, who matches up with my Vaporeon. I decide to switch into Peach, who unfortunately ends up getting sacrificed to a Dragon Rage Hyper Beam combo, so I send in Raichu to handle him, taking him down with a single Thunderbolt. His next Pokemon is Dragonair, so I switch Vaporeon back into battle and use Aurora Beam, and just 2 turns later he's taken down, while suffering a bit of damage in return. His third Pokemon is another Dragonair, so I stick with the same tactic, and 2 Aurora Beams later he's taken out as well. His fourth Pokemon is Dragonite, so I decide to send in Vileplume as a sacrifice to reheal Vaporeon. I then switch him back into battle and use Aurora Beam again, taking Dragonite past half health, though I'm unfortunately KO'd by a Hyper Beam. I send in Arcanine next and use Bite, which does absolutely nothing. Then I try Flamethrower, which also does nothing, so I started thinking Vaporeon was the only real hope for this battle. That led me to use a Max Revive, restoring him again, and then I healed Arcanine with a full restore. On the following turn I got lucky with a Flamethrower, putting Dragonite in red, then switched Vaporeon back into battle after Arcanine fainted, where he was able to deal the finishing blow with another Aurora Beam. And lastly, his final Pokemon was Aerodactyl, so I switched Raichu into battle and used Thunderbolt, which did quite a bit of damage. Unfortunately, he'd be taken out by a Hyper Beam, but I sent Vaporeon back in to deal the finishing blow with Surf, marking my victory over the last Elite Four member. And it was time for the final boss. This is where it all counts. We're about to find out if this team of Evil Stone Pokemon have what it takes to become Pokemon champions. And there's no better challenger than the man himself, my rival, Gary. We jump right into battle and go Pidgeot versus Vaporeon. In the first turn, he hits me with a critical hit Aerial Ace, doing some good damage, and I respond with Aurora Beam, knocking him down some health. We go back and forth with Aurora Beam and Aerial Ace, landing us both 1 hit away from death, so we both decide to heal up on the next turn. I follow it up with another Aurora Beam, and he uses a sand attack that lowers my accuracy, and makes me miss a whole bunch of attacks afterwards while he spams Aerial Ace. But one more Aurora Beam lands, and then I switch out to Raichu once my health got dangerously low. She tanks an Aerial Ace and finishes him off with Thunderbolt. Gary then sends out his Rhyhorn, so I matched up with Vileplume. He hits me with an Earthquake, doing some serious damage, but he's no match, as Vileplume Giga Drain one-shots him completely. His third Pokemon was Alakazam, so I sent an Arcanine to spam Bite, and just 2 turns later he was knocked down as well. Now onto his fourth Pokemon, Gyarados. Of course I had to send in Raichu to handle him, getting that one-hit KO with Thunderbolt once again. His fifth Pokemon was Exeggutor, and I sent in Peach as a sacrifice to heal up Arcanine, but the Exeggutor just kept putting me to sleep back to back and eventually took me down with a few Egg Bombs. But it didn't matter, as I sent in Arcanine and got him down to low health with Flamethrower. Of course, he used the Sleep Powder once again, putting me to sleep, but I used a full heal to wake up, then blasted him with another Flamethrower, taking him down for good. And lastly, his final Pokemon was his Charizard, so I decided to send out Raichu once again. I used Thunderbolt to get him below half, but he absolutely decimates us with a Fire Blast. So I send in Nidoking next, who barely survives another Fire Blast, but poisons him with Toxic in return. I decide to full restore on Vaporeon and sacrifice Nidoking to his Aerial Ace. And then I sent Vaporeon right into battle, getting hit with a Fire Blast, but countering with a final Surf to take his Charizard down, ending the match. And with that win, we were now crowned the new champions of the Kanto region, all while using Pokemon who could only evolve with Evolution Stones. From there, we're greeted by Professor Oak and register our team into the Hall of Fame. As this challenge comes to an end, I can honestly say it was quite some fun. Even through early game struggles trying to drag Pikachu through Brock's gym, we were able to push through and build a real solid team. And I will say, Vaporeon ended up being the clear MVP. He carried us through gym after gym and then into the Elite Four like it was nothing. But he wasn't alone, as both Raichu and Arcanine deserve their flowers as a close second. Raichu's speed and coverage made it a lifesaver in so many fights, especially against the most feared Gyarados. And Arcanine served as a well-needed powerhouse to end battles. Clefable, Nidoking, and Vileplume all played their role just as well, each one having their own moment of greatness. And overall, I think I built a quite decent team. My take on this challenge is that a team of Evilstone Pokemon might just outclass your average Pokemon team, but that's just my opinion. Feel free to leave yours down below. Leave a comment on what challenge I should take on next, and if you enjoyed the video, hit that sub button for more runs just like this. And check out some of my other videos, which should be somewhere on the screen. Until next time.